Welcome to today's episode of Financial Fluency. Today I have Kat Lamb from IT Solopreneur. Hi, Kat. How's it going?
Hi, I'm fabulous. How are you?
I am good, and I am really excited to talk to you today because I think you are in a sector of the entrepreneur, solopreneur world that is really exciting and really important. And I also am excited by the fact that you have an accountancy background. So thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Can you tell us the story of how you got to running IT Solopreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm, as you mentioned, I'm a professional accountant by training, and I got into the IT space because I was basically bored with accounting in my second year in accounting. So I'm like, okay, how can I move this career into something more exciting? So I got into IT, and the company that I was with was implementing a major information system at that point. And I was seconded from the client side to work on that project. And that was kind of how I got my foot into the door in IT. So many years later, I stayed in IT, in consulting. I joined various consulting firms, and then I got sent all over North America to do client implementations for Oracle ERP in particular. And the travel, Jen, got to me. And so I was basically traveling Monday through Friday, crossing the border from Canada to the US, and coming back home on weekends. Now, for the first 2 months, it was awesome. Got to experience all sorts of new places. But then, you know what, it got old really, really fast. Like traveling from Monday to Friday means Friday night, you're going to be spending basically your Friday night at an airport waiting for your flight home. You'd get home by midnight. You'd have a one-day weekend to do whatever made your short list. And then on Sunday, you'd have to prepare again for the commute out to the client site. So I lasted about, traveling week to week, I lasted not too long. And it was at that point, I was like, you know what, like, I can't do this anymore. I need to just quit consulting and just stay in one place, and I'm just going to teach fitness. But then I ran out of money. So I did that. I ran out of money, and so I was like, okay, well, I'll get back into IT consulting. But this time, I'm going to do it on my own terms. And so that was when I chose to be a self-employed, an independent IT contractor, and engaged, just I kept my network up with some of my previous clients. And hey, I'm in this space. I'm available if you need the help again. Just let me know if you have any questions. And then not too long after, one of my previous clients reached out to me and said, hey, we need support. Can you help on this project? And so that's kind of how I got into being a self-employed contractor. And it's been 12 plus years now. I love it. So not go back. And what I realized was I actually had to learn a lot of stuff on my own. I had to learn how to set up my business on my own. I had to learn how to, I had no clue like how much back end stuff that you had to know, like when to remit your taxes to the government. I didn't know for the first year, so I paid penalties and interest. I didn't know that you had to set aside a sum of money for taxes for your corporation. And whenever you pay yourself, for example, you'd have to set aside some money to pay for income tax. I mean, these are really obvious things that I'm like, well, of course then, of course anybody would know to do this, right? But coming from an employee mindset to being self-employed, you don't have to think about that. Right? Like being an employee, well, somebody else does the remittances for you, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And, training is another area. Once being self-employed, as an employee, you had a career plan that was, I guess, aligned with your career plan within the organization, but they trained you, right? So various, you'd go on various Oracle courses and learn this and that for the next project or whatever. But once you're on your own, everything is on you, right?
You have to do your own training.
Exactly. and that is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then also, one of the main reasons why I started IT solopreneurs, and especially in the realm of IT, there's not a whole lot of people, if you get what I'm saying. Like they're not
Oh, people.
people.
Yeah.
So soft skills is not necessarily an emphasis
Mm-hmm.
on being a good consultant. But the fact of the matter is, sure, you can have the technical skills, and sure, you have to know what you're talking about, right? You can't just BS your way through. But if you have those soft skills, you are going to be that much better than the rest of your peers.
And if you don't have the soft skills, and you're having to not only do the technical part, but also be the salesman for your business. If you're a solopreneur, you have to sell your services.
Absolutely.
You don't have salespeople in the company anymore.
Exactly.
I can see that being really difficult. And you know what? I do want to point something out because this podcast, we do focus on women working outside of the traditional 9 to 5. And the reason for that is I feel like it is, knowing about setting aside taxes, the fact that you had a background in consultancy, it sounds like, not in consultancy, in accountancy. Was it a corporate accountant that you were doing before you started doing the IT consultation?
Yep. Yes.
So even with your training as an accountant, you didn't necessarily know everything that needed to be done by a self-employed person or an entrepreneur. And I do remember the year that I first made enough that I owed taxes and had to pay some penalties because, there's that period of time when you first start earning money. And I know you're in Canada and where you're in the US. It sounds like a lot of your clients are in the US. Is that right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
My
okay.
clients are in Canada.
In Canada. Okay. Well, I know there was this year where I hadn't made enough the year before to have to set aside quarterly estimated taxes. And then the next year when I went in April to go talk to my accountant, I had, and I owed penalties. And I was really upset because I was like, why didn't you warn me that I was going to owe penalties? But it was because I did have a W-2 job as well as a self-employed job. And it was just working out that timing when I finally made enough that I needed to start setting aside quarterly estimated for the self-employed taxes. And I think that is something that a lot of people who are in the US, it's W-2 employment, meaning that you have a paycheck and things are withheld by your employer. But yeah, it takes a few years for a lot of people to learn those things, and you can figure it out in penalties and back taxes if you didn't set aside enough and you have to set up a payment plan. There are just all these little things that not everyone expects when they go into it. So I think what you're doing, especially for IT people who probably did start out with a big company, a lot of people, they wouldn't think about it going out on their own, but nowadays I do feel like so many more people are doing freelance work, especially since 2008, with the big crash and the layoffs from all these big companies and stuff. Job security with those big companies isn't what it was. I don't think anyone feels as secure as they did before. And sometimes being a freelancer with multiple clients is more secure because if you lose one of them, it's not like a pink slip where all your income's gone, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I love how you said that because it's so true. Like being an employee, you really do have a false sense of security. And to give you an example of that, in my first contract, in my longest employee tenure, I was working for a company for 4.5 years. In my first client engagement as a self-employed contractor, they were contracts of multiple months, but from start to end, I was with that one client for 5 years. My next contract was again 3 months long, 6 months long. They kept renewing me. And at the end of my entire tenure with them was another, I think this was like 6 years with some mat leave in between. Like I left to have my baby. And then 8 months later, they're like, hey, we need you for this project. Are you available? I was like, yes, I am.
Yeah. So even being on a contract basis doesn't mean that you have shorter term relationships with clients than you would have through a company.
Exactly.
Exactly. And in some ways, it's so much easier for them to have consultants come in, because if something happens to them in terms of their revenue, they know that they can stop those contracts much more easily than laying off or firing employees if they're in
Yes.
a financially precarious situation.
Absolutely. It's much more expensive to do that, right? Than to just engage, hey, are you free in the next month? Hey, we need you for 3 months, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and it's interesting with a lot of the people I talk to who are entrepreneurs and solopreneurs who contract out things from their own business. Obviously most of us can't take on full-time employees, but a lot of us need web design, need app design. We need, stuff done for our online presence. And it's so easy now to outsource those things to IT people or to copywriters, designers, whatever, in a way that if we had to hire those people, we never could,
Oh, no, absolutely.
It's just expanded the possibilities for small businesses where it used to be only big companies could have a copywriter and a designer on staff.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And the fact that these people are solopreneurs themselves means that we all have access to them as a small client.
That's right. And chances are their breadth of experience is going to be that much better. And so their quality of work, actually both breadth of experience is going to be that much better because they've worked for many different clients and perhaps many different industries. But in addition to that, they're hanging their own shingle, right? And so they're not going to want to suck because if they suck, you're never going to call them again.
Right. And it's so easy nowadays online to read bad reviews. I mean, it used to be, if you were a business and you disappointed a client, they might tell a friend, they might, complain to people in your local town, but it wasn't like it was permanently plastered on Yelp or on, all these places now where you can review people. So it can follow you much further, especially if the company is your name.
Yeah. And I mean, on the flip side of that, you can get really, really good reviews and it can bring so much more business to you than previously, right? Because of that social proof that you now have.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's made it a bigger and smaller world all at once in some ways. Bigger in that you have so many more possibilities, and then smaller in that those reviews and things are accessible to everybody. Everyone can see them, And I was just thinking about testimonials that I've gotten. None of them are from anyone in my hometown. I pretty much all work further afield. Yeah.
Right on.
That's interesting. So when someone comes to you for IT solopreneur, for this website and this blog that you do, how do you help them? What do you help them with?
Well, right now I have basically, I have to clarify. I started this blog not too long ago, in hopes to be able to add value to people who either want to become a solopreneur, like self-employed, and the perspective that I take is from the IT perspective, right? And in addition to that, I wanted to be able to add value to people who are already in the industry, who perhaps don't have the area or the place where they can take training, or to perhaps bring awareness that, hey, these are like really good negotiation skills that you probably need in order to negotiate for your next contract and get a better bill rate. Like, nobody teaches you that.
No.
Right. And so that's the value that I'm trying to provide.
That is so important too. And especially looking at women in IT, which is a very particular segment of people, because I focus on women mainly because we are historically disadvantaged in terms of the way we think about and handle money, the way that money has been passed through the centuries. For a long time, we were excluded from inheritance, for ages in many different countries, money passed from men to men.
But property.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Downton Abbey, the whole thing where Mary couldn't inherit, but it happened all over the place in so many ways. I mean, here in the U.S., there was a while where women and slaves counted as 3/5 of a citizen. I don't know if you've heard about that. I'll put a link in the show notes because I did some reading on it, and it was mainly because the South, where there were plantations with lots of slaves, they wanted to be counted. They wanted the slaves counted in terms of representation because they wanted more representation, but they didn't want to count them as whole people in terms of taxation. So
You know what?
three-fifths was the sorry.
So no, that's, yeah, 3/5, right.
Yeah, so that was like the compromise. So okay, we'll count them as three-fifths of the person for representation. So you get so many representatives in Congress and all of that, but then you don't have to count them as whole people. So it was like three-fifths of a real voting citizen, because
You know
only
what?
men were real voting citizens.
I can identify with that because I am both female and also I'm a visible minority. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Chinese by heritage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I know that a lot of people, a lot of people sacrificed a lot so that people like you and I can vote, for one
Yeah,
thing, and
yeah.
people like me can own property
Mm-hmm.
and remain in this country as a Chinese Canadian or Chinese American in the States.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's true.
I can really appreciate that.
But I feel like with all of that too, like the negotiation skills, the soft business skills that you're talking about, how to read people, how to gauge interest, how to finesse and finagle and charm, I mean, women historically have been taught to be seen, not heard, to be kind and flattering, not aggressive, all of those sorts of things. I do feel like we are disadvantaged in terms of negotiating and learning negotiating skills. I do feel like
Sure.
there are places where sports and things where men are taught to, be aggressive and go after things and stuff like that. So, not to get totally on the gender divide, but women in IT is such a small and particular focus that I think it is so important, especially for women in IT, especially if they are super technical and don't feel like they've gotten a lot of those soft skills, to have someone that they can look to and go to and learn more about that.
It's true. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Jen, because it's really, I mean, it's not to say that anybody needs to be aggressive in order to be successful at negotiating, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the art of being able to read people
Mm-hmm.
and to figure out what is important to them
Yeah.
in order to get what you want,
Which
right?
sometimes isn't the most obvious thing,
No, not at
with
all. Yeah.
hiring. Sometimes the most important thing is having someone who will fit well into the company culture, which you may not have experienced yet because you've not been hired. They may have had problems in the past with certain types of employees doing different things that you don't even know. So, listening,
Exactly. Yeah.
talking, really finding out what skills and qualifications are most important to them, and how you can bring that to the table. And also the idea, this is something I love from Ramit Sethi, is that the idea of, okay, so you set a price and then you say, okay, now let's talk about all of the other perks. Let's talk about all the other benefits. Like, okay, so we set my salary, but there's so many other things you can negotiate that a lot of times people
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think to. Like, okay, so the salary isn't quite what I wanted, but I could make this work if I can have
Remote work, for
remote
example,
work,
and
if
telecommute, you know.
there are different types of things that you can negotiate for. If you need more equipment, if you need more training, I mean, that's something that you can
Exactly.
negotiate for too. Is like, this is, really great opportunity for me. I need a little bit more training to do this, and I will stay with you and complete this project if you pay for me to get trained, or, all kinds of things that you can work on.
I love how creative you are in terms of looking for different areas in which to negotiate. That's awesome.
Well,
And
the
that's really what
value,
it takes, right? Like,
yeah, and the value exists in so many areas beyond just the financial. I mean, especially
monetary value.
when you're looking to build your career, which building skills is one of the most important things for building your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that is really, really awesome. I'm so excited for what you're building there.
Thank you.
How are you getting this out into the world right now? What's going on?
Well, I am writing my weekly blog posts.
Okay.
I'm present on Twitter
Mm-hmm.
and present on Facebook. And that's it for now. Just, to be honest, I'm working full time
Mm-hmm.
on a client site. I'm a fitness instructor
Oh,
on
wow.
the side, so I teach twice a week, and I actually teach bar and Zumba. And
Oh, cool.
Zumba, I actually teach for my clients, just as a cool thing to do, right? It's free for the people in the tower, right, which is my client site.
Uh-huh.
And I teach bar twice a week.
And you
And
know what?
so
the fact that you're teaching it, so obviously you're getting your workouts in every week. And I was thinking of this earlier about how I was watching a construction worker who looked like he was in really great shape as I was stopped at a stop sign earlier today. And I was thinking about like, wow, that guy does not have to go work out. He was, obviously like his job is so physical. And I was thinking about the accountants and bakers and stuff who focus so much on making all this money and then they pay to go work out and get in shape because they want to look like this construction worker did. So just thinking about the fact that you are combining your earning potential with your workout and keeping physically in shape, I was like, that's a really great way to do it.
That is exactly why I got certified.
Yeah, it
so
totally
that I don't
makes
have
sense.
to pay for a gym membership.
Yeah, and you make money and you create connections. Do you ever meet people who end up becoming clients in some other way through your fitness business?
Not so much, but I do meet a huge breadth of people from all different walks of life. Just because, I teach at a rec center, and really it's not just limited to one industry, right? But I like teaching is such a big part of my life. Be it through IT solopreneurs or through fitness, especially through fitness. Like, first of all, you get paid for it, which is minor compared to the value that you're actually getting out of it, right? So it forces you to be in the gym like various times a week, which sometimes
you're going to show up, right?
You don't want to go to the gym sometimes, right? But if you're teaching, you got to show up. And not only that, you got to bring it.
Yeah.
You have to motivate these people to have a good workout. And that's, I love it for that. And so I guess the original reason why I was talking about fitness is that that's where I spend my time as well. And in addition to that, I'm building out my blog. So I'm building out IT Solopreneurs.
And that brings up another really good point that I really love to see with people is having multiple streams of income. Because again, with things like the housing market crash and the recession and all of that, it's so easy for one source to sometimes temporarily dry up or have some problem in some areas. Like, for people who are only real estate agents, there was quite a few years there that were really tough on real estate agents. But like my hairdresser, who I adore, she's a real estate agent on the side, some because she and her husband started branching out and buying some income property. Right. So she became a real estate agent because they bought us another property, and they bought a new primary residence. Yeah, so when they bought a new primary residence, they kept the old one, started renting that out. So they moved into it very slowly and smoothly, and because she and I meet up so often, we're always talking about these things. And it's just been so nice watching her over the last couple of years as she got her license. She made this goal. She wanted to do this. It saves them money when they buy property themselves. She can do it for family and friends. She doesn't do it full-time by any means, but it's this extra stream of income. And I'm thinking of a few other coaches I know who do a different kind of coaching, but are also like a yoga instructor or something. You know what I mean? And they get to do their yoga workout, which they would have done anyways because it's their practice, but then it's a stream of income because they're teaching it. And then sometimes they get invited to go on retreat. So they get to go somewhere cool and be the yoga instructor at someone else's retreat. And, it's just,
that is awesome.
Yeah. And kind of thinking in that way of, I have this skill or I have this desire to do this thing. Is there some way to monetize it that works with my life and my goals and my values and all of that? And I think that's
absolutely. Really, that's such a great bonus. I mean, certainly, it's better to do these diversification of income is one thing, right? But really, I mean, if fitness is a passion of yours, like you're getting so much out of it already, and just getting paid for it is just, hey, that's just a bonus.
Yeah. And my little sister, I'm going to bring up one of my little sisters here because my father's a pilot, and several of us had, just from being kids, being flown around, wanted to get our pilot's license. And I did, but I did it shortly before I had kids. So I haven't really explored it that much. But my little sister, Sophie, she loved it. And it's a very expensive hobby to have, especially when you're going through grad school and stuff. So what she did was she got her instructor's license, which again, it's another certification. It's a lot of work, but she continued working at it. And once she got her instructor's license, now she has a way to actually make money from doing her flying, which I think, I know, which every now and then I think, this is a skill that I have that I'm doing nothing with it. I do want to get back into it. It was just in the midst of having children and stuff, expensive hobbies sometimes fall by the wayside for a few years. But yeah, I was so impressed when she got the instructor's license. I was like, that's brilliant, because now you have this extra excuse to fly. Whereas, most of us, if you don't end up going to some kind of professional level, kind of like with sailing, a lot of people love sailing. But if you don't own your own boat, if you do own your own boat, it's hugely expensive to have it, dry docked and all of those kind of things. But if you're a sailing instructor or something at a yacht club or, whatever, I'm kind of going out of the limb here. But
yeah, definitely. You can pair your passion with, a money-making potential. And that's just, you get to do what you love almost on somebody else's dime.
Yeah, and I actually think it's the opposite of that old saying that those who can do and those who can't teach. I don't think so at all. Especially if it's a passion project and not like a huge part of your career path. If it is something like flying or sailing or scuba diving or mountain climbing, or, one of these sort of things, by teaching it, you get the excuse to go do this thing.
Do it as well.
Yeah. Like there's a photographer that I love here in town in Flagstaff, who he's been in National Geographic for doing these beautiful photos of the Kazakh eagle hunters. But his passion is trekking out into the wild with horses, going places you can't go anywhere except with horses. So every year he does these guided expeditions into like really rural off-road Mongolia. And he goes and his thing is he photographs indigenous people, and he did it long before he got the National Geographic cover. But he would never have gotten the National Geographic cover if he hadn't been this person who went out into these amazing places that most people never see, and did the photographs. So like he was able to pair his passion for like really not even back road. These are treks with no roads at all. Exploration basically, with the photography and it's just, yeah, he's really amazing. We've totally gotten off subject of IT solopreneur here, but I love talking about this with you. I feel like this was a really great discussion.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking about, how you can pair passion with a money-making potential, which is completely financial fluency.
Yeah, it is. It is. And if IT is your passion and you don't like working for a company, if one of your desires is to be independent like you've done, then you guys should all talk to Kat Lamb, because she has been doing this for the last 12 years and knows how to do it, knows how to do the soft skills, negotiate the contracts, all that stuff that I think is daunting to a lot of people who have just been employees. I mean, not to say just employees. People in IT world do amazing, amazing things. But if one of your desires is to leave full-time employment and be independent, then you guys should go find Kat at IT with an S.com, right? With an S, solopreneurs,
Yep.
Multiple solopreneurs. And we'll put the links in the show notes and everything. Kat, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor to be able to talk to you. I'm an avid listener of your podcast. So, to be interviewed by you, I find it a great honor.
Well, thank you.
I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing.
You too. I think this is a great business that you have here. So thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
I hear Sarah talking about this amazing, almost partnership with someone as being part of my team who is dedicating their ideas, not just not just hours. What's the next step? How do they do it?
I love this question. I love it because it's the difference between feeling transactional and feeling like somebody has the seat at the table and they're contributing.